Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Prajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Prajajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada, Pada Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajikacharya Asto Sarasada Shri Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajikacharya Asto Sarasada Shri Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki. Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki. Prem Sakaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gop Gopinath Sham Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki. Shri Vrindavan Mathura Dham Ki. Shri Navadvip Mayapur Dham Ki. Shri Nilachal Jagannath Puri Dham Ki. Ganga Maya Yamuna Maya Ki. Tulsi Devi Bhakti Devi Ki. Sankirtan Yagya Ki. Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki. Gaur Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naranchaivam Narotamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayat Shrinvata Swagata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtanaha Vidyantasto Hi Avadrani Vidanoti Suritsatam Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shlokir Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki. Hare Krishna. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 20, Lord Vishnu's Appearance in the Sacrificial Arena, Text 15. Evam Dvija Agriya Anumata Anuvrita Dharma Pradana Anyatama Avita Asya Rishavena Kalena Griha Upayatan Drastasi Siddhan Anurakta Lokaha Evam Dvijakriya Numatanurita Evam Dvijakriya Numatanurita Dharma Pradanonya Tomita Vitasya Rishavena Kalena Griho Payatan Drastasti Siddhan Anurakta Lokaha Evam Dvijakriya Numatanurita Dharma Pradanonya Matnya Tamovitasya Rishavena Kalena Griopayatan Drastasti Siddhan Anurakta Lokaha Evam Dvijakriya Numatanurita Dharma pradano niyatamo vitasya Vrishavena kalena grihopayatan Drastasti siddhan anurakta lokaha Evam dvijagranumatanuvitaha Dharmo pradano niyatamo vitasyaha Shavena kakalena grihopayatan Drastasti siddhananurakta lokaha Evam dvijagranumatanuvitaha Dharmo pradano niyatamo vitasyaha Shavena kalena grihopayatan Drastasti siddhananurakta lokaha Evam dvijagranumatanuvitaha Dharmo pradano niyatamo vitasyaha Shavena kalena grihopayatan Drastasti siddhananurakta lokaha Evam, thus, Dvija of the Brahmanas, Agriha by the foremost, Anumata approved, Anuvrita received by the disciplic succession, Dharma religious principles, Pradanaha he whose chief interest is, Anyatama unattached, Avita the protector, Asya of the earth, Vishasvena short, Kalena in time, Griha to your home, Upayatan having come personally, Drastasi you will see, Siddhan perfected personalities, Anurakta Lokaha being loved by the citizens. Translation. Lord Vishnu continued, My dear King Prithu, if you continue to protect the citizens according to the instructions of the learned Brahmana authorities, as they are received by the disciplic succession, by hearing, from master to disciple, and if you follow the religious principles laid down by them without attachment to ideas manufactured by mental concoction, then every one of your citizens will be happy and will love you, and very soon you will be able to see such already liberated personalities as the four Kumaras, Sanaka, Sanatana, Sanandana, and Sanat Kumar. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada. Lord Vishnu advised King Prithu that everyone should follow the principles of Varnashram Dharma. Then, in whatever capacity one remains within this material world, his salvation is guaranteed after death. In this age, however, since the system of Varnashram Dharma is topsy-turvy, it is very difficult to strictly follow all the principles. The only method for becoming perfect in life is to develop Krishna consciousness. As Varnashram Dharma is executed from different positions by different men, so the Krishna consciousness principles can be followed by everyone in every part of the world. There is a specific purpose in mentioning herein that one should follow the Dvijagriyas, the most prominent brahmanas like Parashara and Manu. These great sages have already given us instructions on how to live according to the principles of Varnashram Dharma. Similarly, Sanatan Goswami and Rupa Goswami have given us rules and regulations for becoming pure devotees of the Lord. It is essential, therefore, to follow the instructions of the acharyas in the parampara system, who have received the knowledge as passed down from spiritual master to disciple. In this way, although living in our material condition of life, we can get out of the entanglement of material contamination without leaving our positions. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu advises, therefore, that one does not have to change his position. One simply has to hear from the perfect source. This is called parampara, and follow the principles for practical application in life. Thus one can attain the highest perfection of life, liberation, and go back home, back to Godhead. In other words, the change required is a change in consciousness, not in the body. Unfortunately, in this fallen age, people are concerned with the body, not with the soul. They have invented so many isms pertaining to the body only and not to the soul. In the modern age of democracy, there are so many government representatives voting for legislation. Every day they bring out a new law, but because these laws are only mental concoctions manufactured by inexperienced conditioned souls, they cannot give relief to human society. Formerly, although the kings were autocrats, they strictly followed the principles laid down by great sages and saintly persons. There were no mistakes in ruling over the country, and everything went perfectly. The citizens were completely pious. The king levied taxes legitimately, and therefore the situation was very happy. At the present moment, the so-called executive heads are more or less selected from materially ambitious persons who simply look after their own personal interests. They have no knowledge of the Shastras. In other words, the executive heads are fools and rascals in the strict sense of the term, and the people in general are Sudras. This combination of fools and rascals and Sudras cannot bring about peace and prosperity in this world. Therefore, we find periodic upheavals in society in the form of battles, communal riots, and fratricidal quarrels. Under these circumstances, not only are the leaders unable to lead the people towards liberation, but they cannot even give them peace of mind. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is stated that anyone who lives on concocted ideas without reference to the Shastras never becomes successful and does not attain happiness or liberation after death. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Tapta Radha Kanta Namostite Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Panamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubheva Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Lord Vishnu continued, My dear King Prithu, if you continue to protect the citizens according to the instructions of the learned Brahmana authorities, as they are received by the disciplic succession, by hearing from master to disciple, and if you follow the religious principles laid down by them without attachment to ideas manufactured by mental concoction, then every one of your citizens will be happy and will love you. And very soon you will be able to see such already liberated personalities as the 4 Kumaras, Sanaka, Sanatana, Sanandana, and Sanat Kumar. Hare Krishna. Thank you for this opportunity of service. As always, I humbly ask all the Vaishnavas to bless me, that I may speak something that enhances or is based on Srila Prabhupada's philosophy and what he has given us, and is also pleasing to all of the Vaishnavas. So Lord Vishnu is continuing to speak to Prithu Maharaj and is, instructing him on how to be, in one sense, a good ruler. As a king, this is your duty, these are the things you should do, etc. And it's a very interesting purport. Prabhupada touches on many different things. He starts off with Varnashram Dharma, why that's important, the rules and regulations, and then he changes and he says, but for the devotee, that it's actually Krishna consciousness, which is higher than that. And the way to practice Krishna consciousness is through following the parampara system, through hearing specifically. And then he concludes the purport with, again, because Vishnu is talking to Prithu Maharaj, who is a king, the governments of society and the ruling of the world. So Prabhupada is saying, yes, Varnashram is there, and very often we start with that Varnashram. But it's difficult in the age of Kali to follow all these rules and regulations. They say that, in Satya Yuga, the demons and the devotees, they're on separate planets. I'm confused, but basically separate planets or different universes, then the same planet, same country. And then, in Kali Yuga, you're in the same body. So even us in this age, if we want to follow Varnashram Dharma, I'm not going to be a perfect Brahmana. I have certain Brahminical qualities. I have qualities from all of the Varnas. Yes. And of course, as we know in the scripture, Kalo Sudra Sambhava, that in Kali Yuga, everyone is a Sudra. We are so fallen, right? But Prabhupada is saying actually, and of course everything Prabhupada says is very deliberate. So he uses the word here, the only method for becoming perfect in life is to develop Krishna consciousness. And yes, as he says, Varnashram can be done from different positions by different men. Different positions, different men. But Krishna consciousness can be followed by everyone in any part of the world. For everyone, anywhere, at all time. It's available. So Lord Vishnu is telling Prithu Maharaj, and he's promising him in a way that, if you follow your duty, if you take care, if you protect the citizens according to the instructions of the Brahmanas, as it is coming down in the parampara, from hearing, this is how you learn, through hearing from master to disciples. And if you do this without any attachment to any other kind of ideas, if you simply follow the instructions, then every single one of your citizens will be happy. And not only will they be happy, they will love you very, very much. And what happens when you follow your duty 100%, when you are a good disciple? What happens? You are blessed. And for a king, Lord Vishnu is saying your blessing is that you will see already liberated persons, meaning your devotion will attract the sadhus. This is the perfection of life, and especially for a king, to receive blessings of saintly persons. Just do your duty. As Krishna himself tells Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita, just do your duty without attachment. In that sense, you are a Kshatriya. And sometimes you may think, okay, Krishna starts off with saying do your duty, and then later on he says, but then give up all varieties of religion. Sounds like a contradiction in a sense, But this is how we solve contradictions, by hearing from the parampara. This is why the acharyas give their commentary, to put our mind to rest, And yes, we see in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna praises, karma yoga, jnana yoga, ashtanga yoga, but he also says why bhakti is the best. And Prabhupada is doing that in this purport. He's not disregarding or rejecting Varnashram Dharma. It is there and it has its place. But there is something superior, as we say, Devi Varnashram Dharma, right? Krishna consciousness is superior to that. You need, in some sense, if we follow Varnashram Dharma, then, the question arises of qualification. If you want to be a Brahmana, you must have a specific qualification to be a Brahmana. You must have certain qualities, right? But what qualification do you need to be a devotee? Nothing. Anyone and everyone can be a devotee. As we say, there are no hard and fast rules for chanting the names of the Lord. And especially in this age, why is it so different? Because the Varnashram system, Shri Shri Radha Radhanath ki jai, Shri Giriraj Govardhan ki jai, Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. In this age of Kali Yuga, the Varnashram system has been ruined. If you go to India, you don't find the Varnashram system, you find the caste system, where it's changed. It's not based on qualification, it's based on birth, which we according to the Bhakti philosophy, we reject. That because my father and my grandfather were a Brahmana, I'm automatically a Brahmana. But no, that is not. You must have the qualification to be a Brahmana. So in Bhakti, anyone and everyone can practice. There is no qualification, It can be, Bhakti can be applied to everyone, but Varnashram Dharma in one sense cannot, because of the qualification, And as Kali Yuga progresses, it will be more and more difficult to follow Varnashram Dharma, because the consciousness of the people who live here will be more and more degraded. It will be harder and harder. And yes, even in the early days, Prabhupada did say to one of his disciples once that if I told you all the rules and regulations, you would faint. Right? He kept it simple, basic for us in the beginning, right? Because he knew we have no capacity to follow all of these rules and regulations. And that in itself shows the glories of Bhakti Yoga, Jayapataka Swami, in a lecture, he was sharing this story that once there was a Western-bodied preacher in India, and he was preaching to a Mayavadi, a Brahmana who was a Mayavadi, and they were having this debate about philosophy. So the Mayavadi is telling the devotee that, no, you have to take another birth before you become pure. Even because you're not in this body, you're not even qualified to be a Hindu. You're like a Malecha. You must take another birth, and then you can, be pure, because your birth is so sinful. So the devotee says to the Mayavadi, okay, what is more powerful? The power of sin or the power of the holy name of Lord Vishnu? What is more powerful? The Mayavadi looked at him. And then he said, and he says, no, but you have eaten meat, so you are sinful, you have eaten meat, you must take another birth. So again, the devotee says, okay, then tell me what is more powerful, the sin of eating meat or the power of the holy name? Tell me what is more powerful, because essentially you're saying that eating meat then is more powerful than chanting, if that's what you're saying. And the Mayavadi had no answer, because he couldn't admit that the Lord was supreme over sin in that way. So Prabhupada is also saying that, yes, the aim of Varnashram Dharma is liberation from karma, all of this. But in Krishna consciousness, we want to go a step further than liberation. We want an actual process of perfection, right? And if we look in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, when Lord Chaitanya is conversing with Ramananda Rai, then he asks Ramananda Rai, what is the process of perfection? Tell me, what is the goal of life? And Ramananda Rai says, Varnashram Dharma. Following Varnashram Dharma is the perfection of life. And Lord Chaitanya says, that is external. Tell me more. Tell me more. This is external. I want something more. Lord Chaitanya doesn't reject it and say no, but he says, no, there's something more than this. Please tell me. So then Ramananda Rai goes through, from the Bhagavad Gita, Manmana Bhava, Madbhakto, Sarva Dharman Parityajya, all of these things. He's saying Jnana Mishra Bhakti, all of these things. But Lord Chaitanya keeps saying, no, this is external. Something else, something else, something else. Everything. And eventually he says love of God. And finally Lord Chaitanya accepts that answer, that devotion is the highest. Pure devotion that is free, specifically of speculative knowledge, is the highest. Right? And how do we access this knowledge? Prabhupada is saying through the Parampara system, but specifically through hearing in the Parampara system. Because hearing, as we know, it's the first process of devotional service, Shravanam. It is the foundation of everything in our spiritual life. It is the beginning of everything, of the whole universe. That is how Brahma created the universe. He heard, the Lord, in that sense. So Prabhupada says once in a lecture, on the third canto, I think it was, that you may be a fool and I may be a fool, but if you hear from the correct source, then your knowledge is perfect. It doesn't matter if you're a fool, right? As long as you hear correctly, right? And Prabhupada is saying in the purport at the end that when we disregard the scripture, when we stop hearing, when we start acting independently, concocting ideas, as he's saying, then there will never be perfection and there will never be happiness for anyone. The mind just causes you misery in this way. And we know this, that in bhakti, your hearing forms your vision. You see through your ears in spiritual life. But what do we say in the material world? No, seeing is believing. We say seeing is believing. There's a song from the 60s. I'm not quite sure who sang it, but the song goes, I want a love I can see. That's the only kind of love that means a thing to me. I don't want a love I can only hear about. That I can surely do without. Right? So in the material world, right, seeing is believing. But what do we have to do if we want to go and find perfection? We have to see through the scripture, right? Shastra Chakshu, that the eyes of scripture should tell us everything. Otherwise, it's just speculation if it's not based on Shastra. And unless we receive this knowledge, unless it's taught to us, we won't be able to understand what's right in front of us, right? And Prabhupada is speaking about, mental speculation a little bit in the purport, why we don't do that. And Prabhupada says that the Bhagavad Gita is not a treatise meant for the mental speculators. It's not meant for someone who's a mental speculator. Yes, and it's meant for the chief executives. Meaning, as Prabhupada is also saying in this purport, the heads of state, right? The kings, as Prabhupada says, the Raja Rishis, the saintly kings, right? That these people, these executives, these heads of state, they are supposed to be yogis. They are meant to be masters of the mind and the senses. Someone who's not in the grip of illusion. But yes, Prabhupada at the end of the purport, he touches on government again, But where would you find such a political leader in this day and age? Who's a master of their senses, who's not controlled. And Prabhupada even says that they're just here for personal gain. Where would we find, and even just in general, where do we find people like this? Who are peaceful, who are happy, who are in control. But Krishna says in the 4th chapter that, evam parampara praptam imam rajasoyo vidu, that this knowledge comes down through disciplic succession, and the saintly kings understand it in this way. And that is why they can practice. This knowledge is passed down in a chain. It must come down in this way, an unbroken chain, right? And that is why when Arjuna has his doubt Krishna can tell him, well, you don't sound like a very intelligent person because you're supposed to be a Raja Rishi. You're supposed to be someone who knows this already, who has received this knowledge. You don't sound intelligent. But what are you doing? You're putting the identification of your body in front of everything else in life, to the point where you're neglecting not only your material duty, but your spiritual duty as well. Right? You're neglecting both. And if you continue to do this, then you just miss the point of life. And that's what we do in Kali Yuga, We are so tied into our identification with this body that we just miss the point of life. And Prabhupada says in the purport that the only method to become perfect is to develop Krishna consciousness. So this is why Krishna is, in one sense, chastising Arjuna and saying that, you're a chief executive of society. You're supposed to know this. If you don't know this, how are you going to protect the people? As Lord Vishnu is telling Prithu Maharaj in this verse, that you should protect the citizens according to the instructions of the Brahmanas. And when we think of protection, we think of physical protection, like from crime and violence and that kind of thing. But protection from a king, from a chief executive, as Prabhupada is saying, should go much deeper than that. That protection through the instructions from scripture actually means protection from lust and greed. And my Guru Maharaj says this: would you walk up to any candidate of a political party in your area and say, what's your plan for protecting me from lust and greed? What's your plan? And that's not, they'd have no answer, because they're like, no, we help you actually with your lust and greed. We want to increase it, And as long as we continue to think in this way, as long as we identify with this designation of the body, there will be no perfection in life, there will be no peace in life, and there will be no happiness, right? And this topic of bodily designation, when we say we're not the body, it's actually, if you think about it, it's a really shocking conversation for someone in this day and age to have with someone, because everything in the world, it's about, your ethnicity, it's about your nationality, it's about your gender or genders, it's about your sexual preference, this is the way conversations work in the world. It's tied to all of these things, and to tell someone you're not any of these things, it's very disturbing to them in some sense, and your spiritual consideration is not even considered. As Prabhupada says, that everyone is so focused on the body that the soul is disregarded. It's forgotten about, And we think in this day and age that the more designations I have, the better. The more I have, the better, as the word is upadhi, the Sanskrit word. The more upadhis, the more designations I have, the more fulfilled I will be. And if we just look on social media, spend 5 minutes, everyone is parading all of their designations. I'm this and I'm that, and these are my 20 pronouns and this and that. The more labels I have, the better I am, the more I will fit in, right? But what does the philosophy of Bhakti Yoga say? Sarvapadirva nirmuktam tat paratvena nirmalam. That bhakti will cleanse you of every single designation you have. Everything, right? But we parade them like fundamentally this is who I am, right? This is my essence. This is the essential thing about me. And the more I have this idea that the more I show you my designations, the more peace I will have. And the more the world will be peaceful. If we all just have our designations, our ideas about ourselves, the more peace there will be. But that's not the case. It's the more designations you have, the less peace you have, because there's so many ways now to drag your consciousness everywhere, except to where it should be, My Guru Maharaj says that he gives a very interesting understanding of, government and economic growth, He's very like into this kind of topic. And he says that today economic growth is just a lust on an organized level. Basically. We'll take everyone's individual lust and we'll organize it on a mass scale, and that grows the economy. Basically. But and then we grow and we grow and we grow, but we're not happy. We're just more and more dissatisfied. And then what happens when we're more and more dissatisfied? We look for solutions in illusion. Because we're just covered by illusion. So we just keep looking in our illusion for some solution, But in the 5th canto as well, we will read about Maharaj Gaya. And he's also a king, and there's also a description of him and of how he takes care of his citizens, like that, right? And his principles that he uses for being a successful head of state, right? And yes, the first one, Poshana, protection is there, like in today's verse. It's a different Sanskrit word, but basically protection. But, yes, from crime, from hunger, from violence, but also from material instability. There should be protection from this. And in today's world, there's just more and more instability. The interest rates go higher and higher and higher. The price of everything goes higher and higher and higher, but the money you earn gets less and less. This gap is so huge. And something else Maharaj Gaya would do, because he legitimately taxed his citizens, he would then, at the end, give them gifts from that to take care of them in that way, right? He would levy the taxes accordingly, and then the balance he would return as a gift. You're lucky if you get a return from SARS. If they don't charge you more, for something else in this day and age. And in this way, he always made sure that his citizens were generating good karma. And we know from the verse yesterday in the purport, the percentage of karma that the head of state incurs, good and bad, based off what the citizens do, right? And what else did Maharaj Gaya did? He treated all of the citizens like family. And because he treated them like family, he could speak in a way as to correct them. That, you can do better than this. This is not the perfection of your life. You can higher your consciousness. You can do better. You can apply yourself more on how to reach a higher standard of behavior, right? And that is why also, as Krishna says to Arjuna, you're not speaking like someone who is advanced. You can advance your behavior. You can change your consciousness. Because he had that relationship with Arjuna. But in Kali Yuga, everything is way off the mark. We read these purports and we think to ourselves, well, this is a nice idea, but I don't think it will ever come to pass, right? What do politicians do? Prabhupada is speaking about how they just carry on, making laws and voting for legislation and just creating more and more instability in the world, right? And what a politician will do, first they must get you angry about something. And you'll see, right, you're in anxiety about something, about your material instability, about this scarcity that you have. But anxiety doesn't do anything. Anxiety is not a mobilizing emotion. It paralyzes you. It keeps you stuck and makes you overthink. It doesn't really do anything. You need anger to be motivated to do something, right? So just see how heads of state, how politicians, they will say things, to make you angry, to stir up something, They get you going about, we're talking about upadhis, right? So they get you going about your upadhi, like, this is who you are, this is what you stand for, and you feel like really good about it, like, yeah, this is me, this is who I am, this is everything. And then, and then they'll carry on. Why you're having so much of trouble, why you're in so much of anxiety? Because of them. Because of those people. They're the problem. And then you look at that and you're like, yeah, it's them. They're the people. They're the ones. And then you get angry, And we laugh about it, but it happens. You can see it. and then you buy in to what they're telling you. Your unity with your upadi feels so good for a moment, but then you see a threat, or a perceived threat, which is what the politician is telling you. There's a perceived threat over there, and their existence is dangerous to your designation, to your upadi. And then you get angry, right? And then you get bewildered, because then you start thinking, okay, well, I just want to feel good. I don't want to deal with all of this. I don't know what the truth is. Everything is so confusing in that way. My problems come from those people because there's too many types of those people, and that and that and that. There's too much of that. But I don't want to the politician doesn't just want you to sit in anxiety. They want you to feel threatened by life, by reality, right? And then when you're threatened, you're very easy to take advantage of and manipulate, because you're not thinking, because you're in lower consciousness, right? You don't know what the truth is, and then you're like, well, who needs the truth? I just want to feel good. I just need a narrative that calms me down. I just want to be peaceful with my little house and my picket fence. I just want to have enough money to enjoy my life. I don't need to know about the rest of the world and what's going on, So I just want something that makes life okay with me, even if it's at the cost of them. That's how war carries on. I want to be okay at the cost of them. It doesn't matter, So just on that, I hope that we can see the value of what bhakti brings, the sanity that Krishna consciousness brings to the world in that sense. What Krishna is saving us from, that kind of life. And those people who are trapped in their upadis, what happens? We fall lower and lower into consciousness. And in some cases, addiction, drugs, alcohol, so many things. Because you're so threatened by reality that you just don't want to be in reality. But Krishna consciousness is that process by which you can rise above this material reality into truth, in that sense. And that is why our hearing is so important, especially in spiritual life. In the first verse of the Bhagavatam, that the description is given that this Bhagavatam is there to separate reality from illusion, for the welfare of all. There must be a separation. And we can only access this reality through hearing, through the parampara, right? And that is the mandate. Like, Prabhupada is speaking about, these are the legislations of the politicians. They have their mandates. We as devotees, we have our mandate as well. That you have a human form of life. You must be Krishna consciousness. And you must engage in devotional service. And that is why, when we say the invocation to the Bhagavatam, the second verse, Shrunvata Swagata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana. What is the meaning of that verse? That Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is the Paramatma or super soul in everyone's heart, and the benefactor of the truthful devotee, cleanses desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee who has developed the urge to hear his messages, which are in themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted. So the urge to hear will show us what reality is, will cleanse our heart in that way, where we can access Krishna, right? And this engagement in Krishna consciousness means devotional service. And specifically, my Guru Maharaj says, staunch, unbroken engagement in devotional service. There's a concept in our scriptures, two concepts. It's called Svarupa Lakshana and Tatastha Lakshana. Svarupa Lakshana means that an essential aspect of something. So the essential aspect of Krishna consciousness is to engage in devotional service, to use your energy for Krishna, for his service in that way. And then Tatastha Lakshana, the secondary aspects. When we engage in devotional service, then the qualities will come. We may come to Krishna consciousness, no, I want to be peaceful, I want to be happy, I want to be tolerant, all those nice, beautiful, jewel-like qualities of a devotee. But those are the secondary aspects. They come from engagement in service. Engagement in service is the primary thing that must always be there, because without this core characteristic, you cannot have anything else, any other aspect in that sense. We can always ask, why does Krishna stress devotional service so much? So much in the Gita especially, and in everything that he says, And even, if anyone comes to the temple, Prabhu, are you free? You want to do some service? What are you doing? We always have something for you to do, even if you don't want to do it, Why so much devotional service? But that is our core characteristic, engagement, activity for Krishna, because without that, there won't be anything else, So how do we develop that? We have to work towards accessing an emotional state in which we are constantly thinking of what can I do that will give Krishna the most pleasure? What can I do today that will make him happy? And in this way, if we look, we will find service around us. There's no shortage of service ever. Actually, there's too much service and not enough people. We will always have engagement, but we must try to live our life in a way that we think that way, that what can I do today that will please Krishna? And as Prabhupada is saying, it's not a matter of the body, it's a matter of consciousness. So when we think in this way, what can I do that will give Krishna pleasure? Automatically we are not in the material world. As Prabhupada says, we are in Vaikuntha. We are in that space because we are always thinking of how to offer pleasure. And that is the purpose of a community, especially a temple community, that it should run in a way that facilitates this at all times. What can I do that will please Radharanath today? What can I do? We should come before them and say, Krishna, Radharanath, what can I do for you today that will make you happy? Every day we should come and we should ask them that. Or, I'm going to do this and this today, please let me know if this makes you happy, if this pleases you in some way. And when we engage in the service, then we attract the mercy of the sadhus in this way. So we should come and say, yes, I'm here, tell me what I can do for you today, Krishna, right? Because as we were reading in the ninth text of this verse, the ninth text of this chapter, in that purport, Prabhupada says that when Krishna is pleased, when the Lord is pleased with our service, then our mission in life is fulfilled. I will stop there. Any comments, corrections, question? Okay, Jai Prabhu and Mother Ranga. So, who would like to go first? Hi, Krishna. Mm. 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 Yeah. Yeah. Mm. 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 Thank you, Prabhu. Yes, the mood of surrender is very important in devotional service. It just reminds me, my Guru just was, when he was speaking on this kind of topic, he says that, this constant engagement in devotional service. And he says that, the word every day will be the death of a devotee. Meaning, every day I have to do this. Every day I have to see you. This, every day, okay, yeah, I'll put me on the roster, it's fine, whatever. But this mood, like Jai Prabhu is saying, of surrender, of enthusiasm, this is what will drive our devotional service. And from that, all these qualities will emerge in that sense, yeah. Mother Ranga. Mm. Yeah. Mm. 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 Yeah. Mm. 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 Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Reminds me of Prabhupada says that is my ambition to wage a war on godless civilization. That is my mission, my ambition. Yes. Anything else? Okay. Krantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Premanande.